Okay, so today we're going to cover section 3-4. I'm going to do examples 1 through 3 on this particular video. And so open your books to page 112. And we're going to be talking about the percent or the percent equation. Percentages are one of the most commonly used mathematical concepts. You'll be using percentages the rest of your life. I don't care what business you go to, even when you go out to eat at a restaurant, you're figuring out a percent of how much of a tip you should give the waiter or waitress. Okay? They are extensively used in scientific communities as well. A percent is a ratio of a number to 100. The symbol for percent is, that's the symbol for percent. So when you see that, you know we're talking about a percent. That's how I do it in cursive, in your typewriting. My pen doesn't want to work here. That's actually the official way for a percent. I do mine real quick like that, but that is a percent right there symbol. And again, it's just a ratio. Ratio is a fraction, right? A ratio is just comparing two numbers as a fraction. But it's a specific one because it has to do with the 100. All right. So for example, if I was talking about 40%, excuse me, you would, to write that as a ratio, you drop the percent and put it over 100. So now we have a ratio using 100. And then you can reduce that and get 2/5. So 40% is the same thing as saying 40 over 100, and that equals 2/5. And 2/5 can actually be written as a decimal. I'm going to write my symbols over here. If you divide that out, you get 0.4. Okay? So we've taken 40%, we've written it as a fraction as 100, we reduced, now we have a fraction, and we can also divide that out and convert it into a decimal. So these are different ways that you might see percent. Example 1 says write 82% as a fraction and a decimal. Well, to write it as a fraction, you're going to drop the percent sign and write 82 and put it over 100. So now we've written it as a fraction, but you always want to reduce your fractions. And so if we reduce this, we get 41 over 50. All right? Now, you could divide this out on a calculator and get your decimal. But the other thing that you need to know, that if you're converting, this is 82%. I'll write it over here so you kind of know what we're doing here. And 82%, to write that as a decimal, you drop the percent sign, and actually the decimal's right here if you want to be accurate about it. So when you're dropping by a percent anytime, so you're actually really what you're doing is you're dividing by 100. So when you divide by 100, and I'll just do that. Here's our decimal. Right here, you're going to move your decimal to the right 2 places. And that gives you 0.82. So right there is your decimal. So that's pretty easy. I mean, if you have this, you can divide and get that. But if they just give you 82%, they're not even asking for this information. Just know you drop the percent and you move your decimal to the left 2 places. Because that's what you would do here if you were dividing. If you're dividing by 100, you're actually moving the decimal over 2 places. Now this is basic math. You probably have had percents before, so I'm going to assume that this is kind of review for you. Now on example 2, it says write 3/5 as a decimal and a percent. So here they gave you the percent. Here they're giving you the fraction. So to write 3/5 as a decimal, I don't know if you could see that. My marker doesn't want to work today. There we go. So 3/5 as a decimal. Basically, you divide that out, okay, right? 3 into 5. Go ahead and divide that out. You can also use your calculator, right? Here's my decimal, so I'm going to put a 0 here, bring my decimal straight up. 5 goes into 36 times. So my answer is 0.6. So there it is as a decimal, all right? Now, once you have a decimal, and you know what the decimal is, it's real easy at this point to write it as a percent. All you have to do is, so we know that it's 0.6, so all I have to do is move my decimal to the left 2 places, and I get 60 and add your percent. So actually what you're doing is you're multiplying this by 100. All right, and when you multiply by 100, you move the decimal to the right 2 places. When you're dividing by 100, you're moving the decimal to the left 2 places and adding your percent. All right, so let's look at example 3. I'm sorry, I was just looking at my notes again. I realized I wrote that wrong on my notes, but I did it right on the board. Yay! All right, so example 3. Now it's giving you a decimal, and it asks you to write it as a percent or as a fraction. So to write it as a percent, remember, we're going to move our decimal, just like we did here. We had a decimal. We're going to move the decimal. We're going to move it 2 places to the right and add our percent. So you get 155%. To write this as a percent, as a fraction, if you already know this, all you have to do is take 155, divide it by 100, and reduce. That looks like a 6. And you get 31/20. So now you have it as a fraction. So we went from a decimal to a percent to a fraction. Here we went from a fraction to a decimal to a percent. And here we started with the percent and went to a fraction, reduced, and then percent, moved our decimal, and got it that way. So that's examples 1 through 3.